You know, as I pondered this video idea in my head of doing an analysis of the Emperor in Baldur's Gate 3, I, like in every other analysis I've done, asked myself what is the first thing I think about when I ask myself, what do I think of this character? And you know what my thought was for the Emperor? That this guy feels like a Reddit moderator self-insert and downright I'm better than you kind of guy, or illithid. I have some thoughts on the Emperor, and today we'll look at him with regards to his writing, and considering this is the first analysis we've done on a character that isn't a companion, the analysis on his writing will be even more important, because unlike with the companions, all we get with the Emperor is cutscenes in the story that Larian gave us. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Having returned from a little trip I took in which I proposed to my lovely girlfriend and now fiancé, it feels great returning to YouTube. With a lot of stress lifted off of my shoulders, we now begin another charge of analysis, rewrites, and livestream content as I look to get this channel to 10,000 subscribers. We kickstart this journey with an analysis on the Emperor, a character that I think a lot of people share my own opinion that I stated at the start, and a character that some even romanced. What is wrong with you people? We'll be looking at the Emperor as he is presented in-game, and I'll also touch a little on this whole Dream Visitor / Emperor storyline, because a lot was actually changed and or cut, and due to these cuts, this storyline, and by extension this character, suffered. So, without further ado, grab yourself a carton of chocolate chip cookies and some cold milk in a chilled glass, because this video will no doubt be a long one. To begin, I'd actually like to start by covering what was cut in regards to the Dream Visitor, the Emperor, and the illithid powers, as I want to establish possibly what Larian wanted to do originally, and we can use the cut content to compare the content we got in the final release. So, following 12 hours creating your own character, just like in the base game, you would have been asked to create another character. But unlike in the base game where it tells you to make a Dream Guardian, the game will ask you, who do you dream of? What attracts you? Let's ponder what a player might have thought when they reached this point in early access and before. For most, I'd imagine we'd take those two questions at face value and think nothing deceptive about the questioning. We might think of our significant other or our fantasy partner. We don't know why we're making this character, but having you make a secondary character isn't uncommon. Fallout 4 gives you the option to create Nora or Nate, and they'll join you for the intro of the game before dying shortly thereafter in under about an hour of total gameplay. How you created your spouse that died does impact how your child ends up looking, but this is simply an example, by some people's opinion, of minimal impact character creation. This inclusion was cool in the base game, as Dream Guardian makes this sound like someone friendly, but I actually prefer what was cut even more. You see, the Emperor is a manipulator, as we'll soon find out, and so asking you, the player, to create a character that you're attracted to is great. Lust is one of the easiest ways to fall to temptation, but also an easy way to get the player to fall into a state where they don't suspect the reveal that will come later on. Also, having you make the Dream Guardian is great since, and this is exclusive to video games here, in storytelling like this, you pull the gamer in by having them create a character that'll appear in cutscenes later on. By having it be someone they made, you as a writing team are looking to lure them in and make that reveal hit a little bit harder. So far, there's no problems. Now, shout out to Proxygate Tactician for this next portion, but there are some actual cutscenes recorded on YouTube that showcase just how different the Dream Visitor was. In this version, they are more forwardly friendly with the player, promising to help them, encouraging them to use their powers. In fact, the whole manner of upgrading your illithid powers occurred solely through using the illithid persuasion options, and each time you used it, you'd still get the same narration implying that this power you're using is affecting you, taking something away. Now that portion survived into the base game, but as we all know, there is no consequence to using your powers at all. I won't bog this portion of the video down with every single difference since this video is about the Emperor, so allow me to summarize what I think was the original intention with the Dream Visitor. Using the visual evidence we have that I've discussed, and even funny commentary lines that had been cut where the visitor would roast roast you for missing, it's my belief that this visitor was not meant to be the Emperor at all, but perhaps rather your psyche, your mind personified by the Emperor, who is still hidden in the Githyanki artifact, but is using this projection of your mind to convince you to become illithid before revealing itself. Notably, the dream visitor is far more odd in their dialogue, and even from the first cutscene, they come off weird. So I think for the player, it's obvious from the very beginning that something is off. But when we ask what the intention would have been for the Emperor for doing this, we reach the same goal as in the base game. He wants the player to trust him, but it's the execution here that's changed. In the cut version, with my theory, we would have had this psychological battle between the player and their own personification, their mind fighting the tadpole, or perhaps we could be led into a red herring that this visitor is actually the tadpole, and now we'd be in this sort of cat and mouse game of trying to outsmart and outthink what we believe to be the tadpole playing tricks on us. In the vanilla version of the game, the execution is presented as a guardian that comes off slightly less sketchy, but given what we'll cover through the video, the Dream Guardian is presented as this fugitive that holds a great power that they actually might be the good guy. While we lose some of the strong early signs that something is off, and the more psychological conflict that stems from that, we do gain this struggle to know if the Guardian is truly bad. So, let's get into the intro for this character, shall we? In Act 1, a prevailing issue for the party is the tadpole that got inserted into our skulls. Every character we speak to makes sure to remind us that in a little over a week, if we haven't found a cure, that we will morph into a mind flayer, which for me, a D&D noob, I didn't know what that was until I encountered them on the Nautiloid ship. They didn't look friendly, and as such, this is a fate that we wanted to try and avoid. Following a few long rests, however, we get a scene of what appears to be our final night before we succumb to ceremorphosis. Then suddenly, a flash appears on the screen, and we're almost in a heaven-like space. Kneeling at our side is our Dream Guardian, informing us that we're about to transform, that they got here just in time. We recognize the voice, and the Guardian uses some choice language, stating that they saved us once before, that now they'll save us again, before offering their hand. This Guardian then encourages us to continue to nurture our tadpole, that it heralds great power, that for the sake of both of us, learning to wield that power would help greatly. We then are shown this giant skull in space with these light figures that are engaged in some sort of space battle. The Guardian calls this display the fight for Faerun, one that we can help if we embrace our potential. This scene ends with the enemy closing in, and the Guardian being a Giga Chad by holding back the explosion and pushing you out of the dream, I guess. Okay, for an intro to a character, we have one of my favorite intros to a plotline within all of writing, the throw everything at the audience then explain as you go approach, which some could argue is how every story begins, but let me explain. When I first played this game, I had no idea where we were, no idea what this skull was, the fight for Faerun, nothing. I was completely lost, but I was also very intrigued. As an audience member, Larian definitely wanted you to feel overwhelmed and perhaps lost at this moment. Act 1 is supposed to have you settle into these plot lines and conflicts, so this dream coming and this introduction of this character offsets that balance immediately. I already stated why having the Guardian be someone you create is good, but now, with this toned back intro as compared to the Dream Visitor, the subtlety of if this Guardian is actually being truthful when it says to embrace our potential, if it'll continue to help us, is a great wrench to throw into the plot. All this time, everyone and everything has suggested that the tadpole is bad, but now we have someone, a very strange someone, who we don't even know if they're real, suggesting to use it. This is a good balance for the conflict I'd mentioned that the party is dealing with. As an objective, get rid of your tadpole because tadpole bad is pretty basic. It works, but it's linear. When you introduce a different perspective, no, don't get rid of your tadpole, it's actually very good. You introduce layers to the conflict, and actually actually pull the audience in further, because now we want to know which truth is actually the truth. We also don't know what to believe. Those changes Larian made to this scene so far are good. This Dream Guardian is still sketchy, don't get me wrong, but at least here I can buy the idea that there is a bigger conflict at heart, and maybe we don't have all the information yet, which does actually prove to be the case here, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. Good intro for a character archetype that we'll call the troublemaker. They stir the pot, and so far the pot is stirred. We'll cover more of the dialogue and dynamic for the Guardian in this next scene, I promise. Now, let's move on. Upon another few long rests, once more, the Dream Guardian will find you. Notably, the time between the first and second visits can occur kind of long between each other if you don't take a lot of long rests. You might have already found Halsin and had him explain the magic of this tadpole, or you might have just found Nettie. The timing is a bit all over the place. When you awake, once again, the Guardian greets you, reviewing your progress so far. The Guardian might point out how Nettie failed to cure you, or how perceptive Halsin was, but that he also failed to cure you. Then the Guardian will explain how your tadpole has magic wrapped around it, strange magic that is no doubt preventing its removal, before lore dumping about what true souls are, how the cult is using these tadpoles, and they finish spouting by reminding you that without them, we'd be mind flayers. Then the Guardian will state that you are one and the same, revealing they too have a tadpole and have been trying for a long time to get rid of it. Now that we're here, we can go where the Guardian cannot, and together we can stop the Absolute. Then, gosh, this is a lot of exposition. Then the Guardian will reveal that they also stole this power from someone, and this incoming attack they are feeling is that person trying to take this power back. The final message our Guardian leaves us with is basically giving us a new quest. Go and infiltrate the cultists' HQ by convincing them that we're one of them. With that, they push us away again as they defend us from another attack. Wow. Okay, the drastic drop in quality from the first scene to this is honestly a little shocking. As I write this review and rewatch these scenes, I am brought back to the same feelings I had on my very first playthrough. By this point, my interest in the Guardian was there, mainly fueled by a curiosity of who this person is and what they wanted. But after this scene, I was just annoyed and taken completely out of the immersion of this game. Why? Oh well, I'm very glad you asked. We have two main problems that this scene creates for me. First is not as strong, but that it is that the Dream Guardian character is starting to feel like a bit of a D&D or writing self-insert. The language they use on how they are constantly your savior, paired with the sheer amount of lore dumping they do here, gives me this feeling of a know-it-all character that is also mysterious and powerful, and for me, it feels like my player agency and ability to make cool choices is starting to be taken away by this Guardian. The way they speak, and just how much they reveal, feels like Larian thought I was too stupid to figure out any of this out on my own. And they'd be right, but still, this feels too much, and it comes off very smug. Now, being smug and cocky isn't all bad. After all, that is the personality of this character. But pair this now with my second critique. This is just way too much exposition and dialogue for the sake of explanation than what should be needed for a second scene with a character. I like the fact that the Guardian reviews your progress. It's cool that the dialogue changes depending on who you've talked to. The push for the Guardian to explain that this tadpole is covered in a magic and is not possible to remove is also fine, given that at the end of the scene, it's revealed that this Guardian also has a tadpole. And with that, we can maybe assume that perhaps the Guardian tried to take the tadpole out and it failed, and that's how it knows this key piece of information. If that was the scene, okay, it's a big reveal, but the scene isn't bloated. But it's not the only reveal. The Guardian also reveals the inner workings of the cult and how they use the tadpoles for control. He explains the concept of true souls, then reveals they also have a tadpole, before then revealing that they stole this power from someone else, and this person is here to take the power back. The first half is just a flat-out explanation of the plot of the game with very little subtext. Depending on when you get this cutscene, doesn't really change my perception either, since if you haven't done much when you get this scene, then it just comes off like a big spoiler, ruining the mystery you might be trying to unravel, as the Guardian just does all the work for you. If you got all the way to Halsin, where he admittedly also dumps a lot of this on you, then this scene is only slightly better, because we know a lot of this stuff already, and that is the problem. The Guardian Guardian just repeats what we know and acts like we'd never known these things unless it told us. The second half of them revealing they also have a tadpole is a cool addition, but then going a step further with, "Oh yes, and I also stole this power from someone and they are here to take it back," implies an entirely new conflict at hand. Due to the TEATATEAYG acronym, by design, you have to start giving something to the player to make this picture a bit clearer. You can't just keep piling more things on. The tadpole reveal works here because while it doesn't directly explain anything yet, it can lead the audience into some new theories on who this person is. The lore dumping on the cult I think the scene could do without. The reveal that this power was stolen feels like this could have been revealed at the crash scene, or hell, even in a third scene. I just feel like we're mixing a little too much now into the pot, but let's move on. Our next chance to speak with the Dream Guardian is a fully optional portion of the game, the crash. In one of my favorite areas of the game, we get hints about Orpheus, glean a bit of info about the Gith artifact, and most importantly, have Vlaakith appear and ask us not just for the artifact, but to kill the being that resides within it. Okay, so far this is much better. Tying in this conflict and bringing in the Dream Guardian is already helping this rather disconnected storyline. Let's see how Larian approached the scene. As we enter the astral prism once more, for whatever reason, this time our character can roll an arcana to determine that we're in the astral plane. Why they couldn't do this before, I'm unsure. We then get the chance to speak with the Guardian, who invites us for a private conversation. As we approach, the Guardian questions if trusting us was the right call. The Guardian reveals to us that he stole this artifact from Vlaakith because it holds this secret power she claims to have, hence why she needs it back so badly. Okay, we're building some more tension here. This confrontation really feels like we're about to get some epic reveal, some really amazing twist. Then we get a bit more manipulation this time, a little more obvious, as the Guardian reminds us that he can hear all of our thoughts, that Vlaakith is the one lying, not the Guardian. The Guardian asks us why they'd even want to betray or mislead you. After all, they want the same thing as us. They're on our side. They then pull out a blade and kneel, offering the chance to murder them, citing that there is nothing more to say, that if the player doesn't trust them, to simply end it. It's a bit of a dilemma here, but this scene overall is pretty good. We're getting a small hint into a really large plot now, and those pieces are starting to fall into place. This scene has a few varieties to it, of course. If you choose to finally kill the Dream Guardian, because maybe you didn't trust them then, and you still don't trust them now, then you stab them, and they fade away only to reappear and scold you for not trusting them, before explaining that Vlaakith needs this artifact, and you do well to remember that without the Guardian, we'd be mind flayers. On the other hand, say that you trust this Guardian. They'll be happy to know that you can trust them, before revealing that this secret they hold could change the very scope of the Githyanki race if it ever got out. They'll remind you to continue to Moonrise, to find the cult, to learn its secrets, and to rid ourselves of this magic tadpole. And that's it. Alright, kind of a flat ending to a scene that started well, and overall we got a bit of a mixed bag. I also have some gripes that I'll need to discuss here, as I remember getting this scene in my first playthrough distinctly, and asking two questions that bothered me. The first was simply, why am I not allowed to ask any relevant questions, like, where are we? Tell me about yourself, or why are you helping me? This is our third meeting with the Guardian, and it feels like I'm just being bossed around by this alleged high IQ mastermind, and I'm supposed to accept these genius moves they make, but without being allowed to ask any questions and knowing very little about this shadowy figure, I feel like I'm just being taunted. My other big gripe is a topic I've covered in several analysis videos before, which is the, quote, "it's too early to tell you this portion of the backstory." There is no greater offense than if you choose to ask the Guardian what this power they have is. They will straight up say, a logical question, but you're not ready for the answer yet. Oh my word. When I heard this my first time playing, this was the first time I noticed bad writing. I understand why the Emperor would not want to reveal the secret power he's using from Orpheus, guys. But this explanation is the laziest crock of baloney I've seen, and part of how this viewpoint of the Emperor being this Reddit mod, haha you fell right for my trap card persona that I attribute to him is because of this. This is the equivalent of playing tag with your friends at recess, only to tag a kid fair and square, before he turns to you and smiles, telling you he activated his force field and that you're still it. Why not just have the Emperor lie about the power he's using, or literally put a slightly worse trope of another attack coming right when you ask a crucial question? This has always bothered me, as the Guardian to this point feels like I'm being railroaded, and as I pointed out earlier, there is no reason we couldn't have made the Arcana check the first time that we arrived here, but that is so minor compared to this slap in the face of a response. Where is my player agency? Well, I guess it's there since I'm allowed to ask a logical question. Larian just didn't want your question to have importance, I guess. Yeah, this pissed me off, and while the first half of this scene is awesome, since it follows up from the really cool Vlaakith confrontation, it feels like we almost had the climactic reveal of something, but unfortunately, we just had to have the Guardian / Emperor outsmart us once again. Look, the role of this character thus far has been the troublemaker, the wild card. By this point, I don't think a player can reasonably make the prediction that this Guardian is a mind flayer. We might have a theory that it's a real person who really did steal this artifact. We might also suspect this all to be a lie. The debate in our heads is cool. That is the character archetype working. This archetype is meant to disrupt the plot slightly, and to make the player, or of course reader or viewer, question what they're seeing. But the execution feels wrong. It feels slightly self-inserty, and it's not interactive nor fun when you get shut down right away for being curious or asking logical questions. There is no player interaction, just shut up and let the Guardian not just tell you the whole story, but also do everything. Let the Guardian tell you what to do next. Why add this role on top of a character that is clearly stirring the pot? And one more thing I guess that we'll add here. This whole Guardian edition doesn't exist solely through these cutscenes. As mentioned, you can get tadpoles through the game and gain new powers the more you consume. Even if you don't take any of the tadpoles because you don't trust the Guardian / Emperor, you get literally no benefit, meaning that you were wrong about not consuming the tadpoles and the Emperor was right. Oh, and through the game, the Guardian will also randomly comment when you miss attacks, encouraging you to try something else, or saying that won't work. Like Larian. I don't like this. It feels like you wanted to write a mastermind character, but so far they've come off very one note and are very perfect in the eyes of the story. No faults to be seen. To me, personally, that is not an interesting character. Let's continue on. We're almost at the reveal. We get a third dream sequence once we reach Act 2 officially, following the next long rest. This time, the dream visitor is notably not wearing the golden armor, but rather a slightly revealing cloth. Is this a bit of that temptation with lust from the cut content? It's a bit oddly placed, I'd say, since we kind of already had the Vlaakith confrontation, and the tone of the game was definitely leaning towards a more serious one, but alright. The Dream Guardian this time around speaks on the journey thus far, citing that you've made incredible progress, and not to give up, that we have to keep going, before looking down in sadness or perhaps exhaustion. We can actually hug the Guardian here, which touches on that possible romance or seduction storyline from the cut content. The Guardian then cites how the order for us to transform has been given many times, and that without their powers, we and the rest of Faerun would be doomed. With that, the Guardian has to rest, and gives us a fist bump for good luck as we head into Act 2. Okay, you know what this is feeling like? And let me know if I'm off with this comparison. This feels like when you're in an English class and are given a writing assignment. You start to think about a cool story that you'll tell involving dinosaurs, but before you begin, the teacher assigns you a subject that you have to make your story about. The subject you're given is ice cream. You're bummed out and decide to just tell your story about dinosaurs, and occasionally, to check a box, you insert here or there some moments about ice cream and how it didn't exist, but boy oh boy do the dinosaurs wish it did, before going back to some other unrelated tangent. Okay, that's kind of actually an odd comparison. I don't think that worked in my mind as best as I thought it would. This scene and the continued presence of the Guardian is starting to level out to be kind of flat. We still don't know much about who this Guardian is, but Larian insists on reminding us every single time we see them that we owe our lives to them, that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and that we aren't allowed to know any information that the Guardian doesn't seem ready to share. Other than this building up the possible romance you can have later on, I wonder, why was this scene added? We don't really get anything that develops from it. We don't really learn too much other than the possible lover of the Guardian. This really is a slow burn story when it comes to this character developing. Following this, the Guardian will disappear for a while. In fact, the next time we actually see the Guardian is at the very end of Act 2, right after we defeat Ketheric and retrieve the Netherstone. A giant portal opens up and out steps the Guardian. This moment is another case of our character not being able to ask how our Guardian is able to enter into our plane of existence, while I guess also confirming that they are in fact a real person. Seems like these reveals just don't matter because now it's time for the Guardian to exposit more lore. The Guardian will first reveal that the markings on the crown are from Netherese sources. Then they'll speak about how powerful that magic truly is, that an Elder Brain paired with this crown will be extremely dangerous if we don't stop it. Buddy, we? I just fought Merkel. Where were you? Anyway, the Guardian then theorizes to himself that this magic is the reason we couldn't remove the tadpole before finishing his monologue by providing his knowledge on the final two of the Dead Three, Gortash and Orin. Once again, the Guardian will hype up our next mission and how epic this fight will be to save the world. Look, I get that you want the most casual of players who missed every single clue and got to this point having no idea about tadpoles or ceramorphosis to not be lost, but I have to actually critique this overuse of the same exact scene 3 times in a row. So far, to me, the Guardian character is coming off like nothing more than an extremely obvious plot device. Exposition. We are 2/3 through this game, and we have had almost no character development. We hardly know anything about this Guardian, besides that they stole some power and have a tadpole. Every time they show up, they just encourage us to keep going while tooting their own horn. I am personally unsure who actually enjoyed this character up to this point in the story, because if you did, why? Are we invested in the mystery of who this character is? What is the secret that they're hiding? Again, speaking from my own experience, it was at this point that I was just annoyed seeing the Dream Guardian, and now that I watch these cutscenes back, I notice just how limited you are as a player. This archetype of the troublemaker that we established early on hasn't really developed into anything else. This is still just the troublemaker character, and he is constantly making the same trouble. The repetitive tone of speaking, what this character is talking about each time, how they seemingly steal the spotlight from the player, especially after we just killed Merkel. This is the last time that we'll see the Dream Guardian before the Emperor is revealed. And let's be honest, all of the scenes we had pretty much amounted to nothing. I'll save my comments for the structure of this character later on, but so far, I've been pretty unimpressed. As we move on, we get a surprise attack by some of the hardest Githyanki you'll encounter in the entire game as we get transported back to the astral plane. Things feel different this time as we see this orb shatter around the skull and these tattooed monks running towards the skull. Okay, this is back to being interesting. As we leap closer, another cutscene plays, and we see a Mind Flayer fighting against the Githyanki. Notably, we also see a Githyanki restrained. By what? We're not exactly sure. Then, in a reveal that I'm confident few could have guessed, the Mind Flayer reveals that this whole time, he was the Dream Guardian, and now he needs our help. If we let that Githyanki in the orb be freed, we and the entire world are utterly doomed. consumed. Holy cow, good twist, and what a way to wake the player up if they were half paying attention. This whole scene and fight comes literally out of nowhere. This uses the same model as our first interaction with the Dream Guardian, where the writers throw us straight into this entire plot with little eased in or explained. This time, however, we at least have something to cling to. This must be the thing the Guardians stole. We've got one plot point that we can cling on to in this absolutely chaotic moment. We can attempt to read the Mind Flayer's mind, to which it'll ridicule us for trying, since it's literally telling us its thoughts. We can also roll perception to deduce that this Mind Flayer is in fact not lying. In this mind-screwy moment, everything we thought we knew suddenly is out the window. Or is it? The Mind Flayer, following us helping it out, will exude a pretty long backstory. It, or he, started out as an adventurer, just like us, before taking an arrow to the knee. I mean, before he stumbled onto Moonrise Towers, which, getting a cutscene of Moonrise Towers pre-Ketheric's downfall was really cool, but also is a hint that this character must be pretty old. At the towers, he got jumped by some Mind Flayers and turned into a Mind Flayer in the process, and that began its servitude to the Elder Brain before somehow breaking free. From here, the Mind Flayer disguised himself and aligned himself with the Duke of Baldur's Gate, before forming a mercantile group as he became known as the Emperor. Well, 10 pages of script and we've finally gotten to the Emperor. And this story had to have a twist, and it does. We find out that the Emperor got jumped by Gortash and friends and returned back to the Elder Brain. Then the story goes on, to which the Emperor tells us he was sent on a mission to retrieve this astral prism by his new masters. But as he entered the prism and saw Orpheus, he felt the mind warping of the Elder Brain fade, and once more, independence returned. It was here that the Emperor began his second attempt to destroy those that wronged him by using Orpheus's powers to keep his mind free and to seek out allies like us. And this is a cool detail that really gives the entire Githyanki plotline so much more depth. Any attempt to discuss freeing Orpheus, and the Emperor will inform you that no, if you do that, then you'll doom us all. Besides, Orpheus would just want to kill the party once free anyway, and the narrator all but confirms this by telling us how Orpheus feels. This scene does not end here. Oh no. Then the Emperor switches course. He then begins his sales pitch on how being an Illithid is the best thing ever. More power, more knowledge, and more beauty. He informs us that he has found a way to evolve us, without fully forming us into an Illithid, believing that the player should do this to help better the chances of defeating the Elder Brain. Ha! Fat chance of that happening, buddy. I'm not guzzling down another worm. That's what I did on my first playthrough at least. I deeply suspected a plotline forming here, and this offer seemed so suspicious that it was almost too good to be true. It is too good to be true, isn't it? Well, we'll get there. So, assuming you eat the tadpole, you and probably 98% of the player base will immediately want to reload your save, as your character will now look like a demonic and sick half-Illithid, and look, we all play this game to have our hero look beautiful, don't we? The Emperor, if you choose this route, will be super happy, calling you exquisite. If you choose to refuse the tadpole, and you ate a few tadpoles along the way, well, this is your grand punishment. A wisdom saving throw. Yep. And of course, if you didn't consume any tadpoles, you don't have to make this check. I promise we'll cover this scene in a second. If you'd chosen to refuse the tadpole either route, the Emperor will assure you that it's okay. You probably aren't ready yet. Take your time, before promising that the amazing power the tadpole offers will help us defeat the enemies that we'll no doubt encounter in Act 3. And with that, finally this scene is done. Let's review. First of all, this was a long, and somewhat bloated scene. We got so much that happened that I think it's easier to break this section into parts. Structurally, something had to happen here. Think about where we are in the story. We have just finished Act 2, and with that, are headed into the final act of the game. I've discussed already in my structural analysis video of Baldur's Gate 3 that Act 3 feels the weakest on a narrative scale, and that is partially due to the lack of build-up for its two villains, and also a real lack of stakes and opposition that is left for us. Yes, we have to still defeat the Elder Brain, but after having beaten a literal specter of Merkel, we kind of feel like badass warriors, which we are, so we have to ask the question, who's gonna stop us? So I ask myself, if something had to happen here, what should it have been? Well, Well, ideally something that sets the party back slightly, or presents an evolution of the current plot that we're facing. I would argue this scene does the latter by introducing us to the Emperor, revealing to us the true source of the power protecting us, and returning to the early hints of the tadpole and our possible lust for power. The purpose I'm fine with, but now we can look a little bit at the content within the scene because it's a bit of a mixed bag. It is a cool reveal that the Emperor was a mind flayer playing tricks on us the entire time. It feels misleading and wrong that we got played. Pair this with a classic ultimatum and this means, even though we feel this way, now we've got to trust this mind flayer. I like that. And depending on your playthrough, you might opt to trust the mind flayer or, like myself, fully distrust this guy. This reveal of Orpheus is also pretty good. It is only subtly hinted through the slates that retell the history of Orpheus and Vlaakith. And of course, the mission Vlaakith herself assigns to us that it becomes apparent to us who this really is and why she wanted us to go in here. It's really subtle, but it works and helps tighten this portion of the story. It's a really good use of narrative real estate. The portion where we get this long backstory is, well, long. I am, however, extremely grateful we got a cutscene to show all of this instead of just telling us, and that's often a critique I have for other characters that offer their backstories. So, despite the amount of lore that gets dropped, it's both an interesting listen and a pretty cool watch. It also at least helps Gortash a bit, establishing more story for one of Act 3's villains. Although, where I can praise the display of the story and tying a nice bow around everything that we've seen so far, I also have to critique this scene too. Firstly, remember how I had said structurally something should happen here? Yeah, well, while we get swerved a bit as an audience, the swerve also introduces a lot that is still very new, mainly a whole new character and a new backstory that it crams into this one scene. The momentum was with us going to Baldur's Gate and stopping the Nether Brain, and while the Emperor does briefly speak on how much of a danger this brain is, he also steals the momentum and puts it completely on himself. The reveal of Orpheus and the Githyanki Civil War fits pretty well. My main problem is the Emperor. It's a lot to throw at the player once again. None of this backstory was given prior to this scene outside of he stole something. So with the introduction of the Emperor, this feels more like Larian wanted to check a box. This didn't particularly make me feel more interested in Act 3 either, and for a lot of players, they turned away from this game when they hit Act 3. Now, that is not solely the Emperor's fault, but I would argue that it contributes. By Act 3, we should feel pretty settled into the story. All of this new stuff, especially regarding the Emperor, is a lot, and it's not nearly as tight as it should be. And my earlier critique of this feeling railroady comes back in as well. We are unable to really ask too much of the Emperor. We can't ask the Emperor perhaps the most important question, which is, how did you manage to get free of the brain a second time? I am almost 100% certain that the Elder Brain later reveals that it allowed the Emperor to go free as part of its grand design, but still, this seems like a plot hole that our characters just don't seem to care to ask about. Also, I'd have loved to ask the Emperor how exactly he was bested by Gortash. Didn't the Emperor have friends of his own? As we learn later, he was manipulating the Duke, so couldn't he have fought back? How did Gortash rise to power and overthrow the Emperor? By the Emperor's own words, in this scene, he apparently had a lot of power with being a mind flayer, so how exactly was he bested? Also, and I don't think I'm being nitpicky, but if you want to introduce a scene like this so late in the game, then you've surely got to make this a bit better. But you mean to tell me this is the payoff for consuming tadpoles or not consuming them? A wisdom save? Hey, you know what? This would have been a perfect spot in my opinion if the player had chosen to ignore the possible warning signs of consuming and using the tadpole, that perhaps the Emperor doesn't offer this as a choice, but rather outright forces this upon you. Or maybe he does offer the choice, but if the player refuses, the Emperor might show some of that harsh pragmatism and force the tadpole to connect with you, citing that you've already used so much of its power that we should embrace this too. Is that too railroady? Maybe, but I feel like with this mechanic, I'd be okay with being forced into being a half-illithid since my foolish greed for power means that I'm paying the price now for my actions. And if you didn't consume any tadpoles, perhaps that could actually frustrate the Emperor. Maybe we could have seen a bit of a different side of him emerge, one where his encouragement comes off stronger and much more impatient. Or, you know what? If this wisdom saving throw has to stay, then why not add something later on where if you consume tadpoles, for example, or started consuming them, the Emperor, in a moment of desperation, if the player won't yield the stones to him, perhaps the Emperor can force you to. And since we don't trust the Emperor or know his real intention, we have to make a choice in that moment if we want to trust the Emperor with those stones or choose to betray him either in the astral plane or at the very end of the game like what exists in the base game. Some sort of punishment. Instead, this is it, the consequence of our actions. There is literally no in-game reason not to consume every tadpole you get, and use the tadpole as much as humanly possible. Nothing bad happens to you, at all. You even lose the tadpole at the end of the game, resetting your appearance in the process. This was kind of lame, since from the very start, that means the Emperor is right about everything. I mean, whatever if you want to portray a character as this ultra-smart entity, go for it, but it's not that interesting to me. The game hints at punishment, but the Emperor tells you, nah, nothing like that will happen. You, the player, might think, I can't trust this guy. And guess what? This guy is right about not just that, but everything else too, which just makes me, the player, once again feel very underpowered in my agency. And let's discuss the overall character motivation that exists here, since now that we have the Emperor here, we can look at why he's doing all of this, and if it's written both logically and well. The logic portion somewhat makes sense. The Emperor, a mind flayer, disguised himself as your dream guardian and manipulated you into trying to take down the cult of the Absolute so that he can be truly free, I guess. The goal to me makes sense, but if freedom is your goal, why not just take the sphere and run? If the answer is, well, he needed allies to help fight off the Githyanki Honor Guard, then okay, we helped stop them. Can't he just run away now? If the answer is, well, no, now he wants to stop the Elder Brain, then why does he join the Elder Brain if we free Orpheus? His goal seems like it could have been achieved just like how he first achieved it during his first escape of the Elder Brain. The writing is not so great in my opinion either. The goal is presented as something we share with the Emperor, but he doesn't have a tadpole in his head now, does he? While the reveal of him being Baldurin later might count for something, from what the Emperor says later on, how he isn't the same person anymore, can he even be considered a hero? And perhaps because he's a hero, that might be why he wants to stop the brain? He says that freedom has always meant the most to him, and he needed to recruit allies, but by this logic, shouldn't he keep the disguise up? Like, the Emperor reveals that he knows all of our thoughts all the time, so when we enter the astral prism, why wouldn't he have put the disguise of the Dream Guardian back up? Maybe he starts disguised, and we help him in the fight, but having been drained by the fight or damaged, his disguise fades, and we see his true form, which is not what the Emperor wanted. You know, this could have also helped the ending of the game where you free Orpheus, who is, in my opinion, way too quick to not just work together, but also to willingly become Mind Flayer. Yeah, he's selfless, but if Orpheus saw how you were deceived by the Mind Flayer changing its shape, perhaps he can reference this as a point as to why he will work with you. It's just a thought. Anyway, back to the Emperor. If he was so smart and cared for his freedom, did he reasonably expect the player to see a Mind Flayer and not possibly disagree on helping it? I don't like when I, myself, as the player, know I'm being played, but I'm not given the option to call this out. But wait, Double X, you can refuse the Emperor. Oh sure, you can refuse the Emperor and kill him before then having the Honor Guard turn around and attempt to kill you as well. Now, to be fair, Orpheus later states that his Honor Guard would have done this regardless, but he also implies that we could have refused the Emperor. I can certainly see a world where we either talk them down by citing our actions against Vlaakith, or if we do end up killing the Honor Guard, perhaps Raphael can appear, just like he appears later if we betray the Emperor, and offer a deal, or maybe Orpheus extends his powers to us for an unknown reason. I do like that they provide us the option of refusing the Emperor and showing us be transformed into a Mind Flayer, but with literally no other option existing in a refusal pathway, you only get one option, and that is to help the Emperor. Once more, I can't help feeling like the loose, free, and clever writing within this game, with its branching stories, both with quests and characters, seemingly dries up anytime the Emperor is on screen, and he takes it hostage, preventing any hard-hitting questions, conflict, or choices for us to make. He is the most movie or book portion of this game, and what I mean by that that is we don't get an option with him. You just have to help. You will always get all of these cutscenes that we've seen thus far. Call it the plot if you will, but I think due to pacing, character agency, and motivation that this plot is being poorly done. Wow, that was a lot to cover. How many pages are we at? 15? Okay, and how much more footage do we have to go over? Another hour? Holy cow. Well, let's get moving. We then get our next scene with the Emperor, who is shown to be chilling on a bench, looking down at Prince Orpheus. He gets jump scared, which actually I guess discredits my earlier point that the Emperor always knows where we are. He goes on how fighting off the brain is getting harder with the defeat of Ketheric, and how as of late, he's been distracted by thoughts of someone, Duke Stelmane to be exact. He looks at us and asks us if we really thought we were his first ally, which, no, I didn't think that at all. Didn't you just show us a flashback of you with Stelmane creating this entire mercantile operation? Anyway, the Emperor kind of rambles here about how close the two were, rehashing the lore he provided us with how they formed the shield and how she acted as the face of the organization while he pulled the strings from behind. We finish this scene off with you possibly squeezing his hand for comfort since he's feeling sad, remember? And that's actually it. Well, this scene was laughable. What was the point? I assume we are trying to humanize the Emperor a bit here, but gosh, talk about tonal whiplash. He just revealed to us his true form, tried to seduce us into consuming this tadpole, and now he wants to open up? Sure, maybe you guys can levy this as him trying a different form of manipulation, but considering nothing comes of the romance if you choose to pursue it, I don't concur with that assessment. This scene is also flat, providing very little conflict. It's not interesting to me hearing the Emperor yap. We are in the midst of Act 3. Sorry, but for me, it's way too late to try and build this character up in an emotional sort of way. I don't care, and the conflict that doesn't exist here means that I am even less interested in this scene. You know what could have been really cool with the Emperor? Instead of having this character just be an expositor of walls of text, if in these scenes the Emperor engaged in debate with you, or asked some hard-hitting questions. Maybe he does want to defeat the brain, but is fully convinced the only way that gets done is if we all become illithid. Remember earlier when Withers asked us if mind flayers have a soul? Perhaps we can talk to him about this same question. Either of these would make perfect thematic sense, as for the whole game, we've spent it trying to stop Ceramorphosis. What if now, a mind flayer poses questions that present his argument in a new light? He might ask us what we do if we truly aren't strong enough in our mortal form. He might extend the idea that our mortal life will wither someday, and that being with our romance choice means that we will eventually lose them if we don't both become mind flayers. He could cater to our lust for power, posing the framework that as an illithid, we think faster, hit harder, and our powers we've already acquired during our time in Faerun would only become more potent. This provides some interactivity, but also serves as a subtle way of manipulation. As this scene stands, it's just wrong timing. This feels extremely on the nose. Larian introduces the Emperor in that opening scene, and now this scene feels like it exists solely to try and bond the player closer to the Emperor. The only problem is, as I addressed, it's way too obvious that that is what they are doing, and it's flat. Tonally, it's also completely off. The plot is moving fast. We are into Act 3, and the Emperor, once again, is dragging us and the plot of the game down. Let's move on. The next scene we get is the Ansur questline. The fact that this is a missable quest means if you do miss this quest, you miss out on a fairly big reveal. Will's dad is most likely the one that will tell you about a worm that will be asleep below Worm's Rock. And the Emperor actually chimes in before we embark on this quest, and even as we get closer, as he raises his own suspicions of a worm even existing, stating that there is no worm, and we should just turn back. This whole thing is a waste of time. As a player, this feels like I should pursue this, since the Emperor seems to not want us to. So far, this is much more interesting. And when we reach the Inner Sanctum, we do find a worm, albeit it's dead. Well, I guess the Emperor was right once again. Or was he? The worm suddenly possesses us, and the astral prism stirs. The Emperor emerges, and Ansur calls him Baldurin. I know earlier I said no one could have predicted the Dream Guardian to be a Mind Flayer, but maybe you could have predicted that. But this? No way anyone saw this coming. Ansur and the Emperor speak like old friends, and this scene does a fantastic job. The Emperor tries to begin his convincing talk, but Ansur cuts him off, citing that he gave the Emperor everything, even offering him a clean death once he became a Mind Flayer, and in return, the Emperor simply killed him. Ansur then rises from the grave, and we get one of the best boss fights in the entire game. Okay, before we dive into the second portion of this scene, a brief analysis. This is the first time we've seen the Emperor on a level playing field, and is it coincidence that this is the best written scene he's had thus far? Why? Because he doesn't get the chance to be all high and mighty. Ansur knows him. That's why he cuts him off before the Emperor can even begin to spout his fluff. This scene is two people with a storied past speaking to one another. Even the tone of the Emperor shifts here to one of surprise and perhaps a bit of sadness. And that's important because every other scene we get with the Emperor shows him at his very best and being completely faultless. Moving on, after we defeat Ansur, we get the history lesson we desperately needed. The Emperor recaps a bit of lore that we already know regarding how he got tadpoled, discussing his founding of Baldur's Gate, and explains that it was Ansur who rescued him from the Elder Brain, which ties that plot hole I'd asked about earlier. I would ask how Ansur managed to sneak into a Mind Flayer colony, bypass them all, and an Elder Brain, but I feel like that's a bit of nitpicking. Anyway, it's explained that Ansur tried to cure the Emperor of his affliction, but every route he found was a dead end, and in his tears, remorse, and sadness, Ansur attempted to kill the Emperor in his sleep. But the Emperor had awoke, I guess, and managed to stop Ansur, instead killing his friend. The Emperor finishes his spiel once more, motivating us to move on from the past and get those Netherstones, which wraps this scene up. Okay, I'll hand it to Larian. This whole scene and quest are awesome, no doubt about it. It works so well because, as I mentioned a moment ago, finally we get a chance to turn the tables on the Emperor, first through the reveal of him being Baldurin, and then with Ansur standing up to him. This smart character clearly couldn't stop this information from coming out, and speaking of said information, wow, so the Emperor is Baldurin. Now, I admit, when I first played this scene, I took a few extra seconds to process the name Baldurin before realizing that yes, the game meant that Baldurin. Having never played the first two Baldur's Gates and not really knowing Forgotten Realms lore, I will not judge any outside material here. If this game didn't explain it, it doesn't exist to me. So did the reveal hit as hard for me without all that extra context? Yeah, I think it still did. Considering Orpheus is in the Astral Prism, Ansur is an old dragon, and now the Emperor is revealed to be Baldurin, it all feels like one ancient tie into figures in a plot line that is way bigger than our own party, and I'm okay with this. It's really cool feeling the history of these figures and getting to see a bit of how they all contributed to the events that brought Tav and his friends to this adventure. Meeting Mystra or fighting Ketheric, the game properly builds up all of these people. Learning that the Emperor is Baldurin at least gives him some of that much needed credibility, but also loops him into the events of the game a bit more. Not that he necessarily needed that. I could critique this, however. If we follow the self-insert and Larian's favorite NPC moniker, then of course the Emperor is also Baldurin, the world's greatest hero and founder of Baldur's Gate. But I won't critique. As I said, the way that this is presented, it's a hidden scene. It's cool, and the dynamics between Baldurin and Ansur reuniting works pretty well. The cheesy backstory is par for the course with the Emperor, but hey, at least we once again got some cool visuals. Overall, probably the coolest scene with the Emperor, and a scene that actually made me care about the character, if only slightly. The next scene begins with us waking up in the Astral Prism, and we see the Emperor just chilling, shirtless. Oh, don't tell me we're gonna have squid time with the squid. Please, God, no. Now, if you're a normal person and refuse to trust the Emperor and don't want to romance him, you can call this pile of crap out, citing how you don't trust him at all. We then get a new vision that the Emperor shows us. We see the same cutscene we saw earlier of the Emperor and Duke Stelmane, except we now see that the Emperor had enthralled her this entire time. He then just comes out and calls us his puppet, and tells us how we have no other choice but to take him to the brain, and that when we reach the brain, we'll do exactly what he says. He also tells us that we should reconsider embracing our illithid potential, or else he'll force us to evolve. Okay, on one hand, I'm glad glad we're finally being honest about intention here, people. At least Larian was self-aware enough to have this character be self-aware to admit how truly sick he is. For anyone that says this guy isn't a villain, I rest my case due to this scene. This monologue that he goes on, however, is extremely on the nose, and I am not a fan of it. You know, what if we found out about the Emperors through some clever exploration? Maybe we confront him with a key piece of evidence showing he lied or that he actually manipulated Stelmane. Why does he have to be the one to state this obvious side of himself? Now that we are this deep into the analysis, I feel like I should point something out. For those who say, but Double X, the Emperor holds the key to your survival. We have to follow him. It's the plot, right? I get that, but Larian wasn't forced to make this character a part of their story, especially so central like this. Because Larian essentially put the Emperor as the leader that you have to follow, that is always one step ahead, that's smarter and now apparently can just announce his intentions to us and we can literally do nothing, sucks. Like, he's this big pillar of your story that you ran with, and for me, this sucks the life out of his story. This monologue is also the most self-inserting thing he said thus far. Like, what kind of being just flat out says all of this stuff, lies about his origin, appearance, and his past, and gets to just snap us away? This feels like the Dungeon Master's custom character they inserted into your campaign that is there to railroad you into the next objective. Yeah, I am fully turned away from this character by this point. Any interest that I had is gone, and I am fully annoyed with how they place the Emperor. A character that can outsmart the player every step of the way, can snap the player away after monologuing as they did, he can't be killed because they are the most important person in the story, is also not an interesting take. There is no interactivity. But wait, what about Raphael? Isn't he the same kind of villain, Double X? No, actually, he's similar, but he's done far better. I've always said, what if Raphael was a bigger part of the story? And it's during this thought practice that I think I'd have my answer. He would wind up just like the Emperor. The fact that Raphael is barely in this game, save for the moments he appears to cut deals, helps his case a lot. He doesn't limit the party, and his logic is extremely sound. He's a devil, he cuts deals, he's even fairly entertaining. He also loves a monologue, but outside of the unavoidable Act 1 encounter you have with him, you literally never have to talk to Raphael again if you don't want to. And of course, his House of Hope is avoidable. The deal you can cut with him is this sort of floating, ever-present possibility for you as a player, but you know, that's like the worst case scenario. And yet, he's still got a big presence in the story of Baldur's Gate 3. Granted, most of it is explained in books you can find around the place or by NPCs. So no, he isn't that similar to the Emperor. I don't know. I see praise online for this character that he's this master manipulator, and sure man, what a great manipulator by telling you how great of a manipulator he is. I think with the Emperor in this version of the game, what he does isn't really subtle, and it isn't an interesting manipulation either. It's just annoying that we can't do or say anything because Larian decided to position him as this dire NPC that we need. It's not really a game, it's just us following this guy around pretending we have no idea what's going on. So let's move on. But wait, Double X, you almost forgot. Oh, right. So yeah, you can actually romance the Emperor. Yup, in this version, the Emperor tells you how he was studying you in order to better devise a plan to convince you to work with him. Through his studies, he's figured out that we're full of contradictions, but that he also really enjoyed our company. He asks if we'd like him to continue flirting with us, and if you say yes, well, you'll get squid time. Depending on how you take your coffee, you can either romance the Emperor in his true form or as the Dream Guardian, and I have to say, romancing him in squid form is just hilarious and also super nasty. No offense to squids, but not knowing where to kiss the Emperor and having your party members teleport in on you was really good. I'd also never seen this romance before, so yeah, this was at least cool to finally see. When you wake up, the narrator comments how you feel amazing, having experienced the single greatest experience in your entire life, and oh my god. Okay, so he's great at romancing too. Perfect! Is there anything that the Emperor is bad at? Do you guys see why I say this is a self-insert character? The scene kind of ends as all Emperor scenes do. We must stop the Elder Brain now. We had squid time, but seriously, you've got blah 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 stones to save, and blah 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 haha, listen to me, I have the plan to save the world. Hey, buddy, we're the hero of this story, remember? I won't fault Larian for including the Emperor romance. Do I think it could have been done better? Of course. It could have been cool if he was able to manipulate your love interest, perhaps, or did all of this just to then be discovered by the player that he made these same offers of love to everyone else? After all, anything to gain the party's undying trust, right? But as it is, I'm sure a portion of fans out there got really happy seeing this. To you people, I have no comment. To this scene, I'm whatever about it, and I'm about ready to finish this video up. So through all the fun and games of Act 3, at some point we do have to confront the Netherbrain, and so we head down to the colony, and in doing so kick off the final mission of the game. Now notably, if you went to the House of Hope and got the Orphic Hammer, the Emperor will know you did this and prevent you from entering the astral plane. I'll address this more later. Well, down at the colony, sure enough, here comes the Netherbrain. It'll give its very own monologue on how it was the true mastermind behind everything all this time. Notably again, the Netherbrain actually comments that it allowed the Emperor to slip its leash, which, does that mean the Netherbrain knew Ansur would return to help Baldurin, or did the Netherbrain mean the second time the Emperor got away, because wasn't the astral prism with Orpheus's powers the reason Emperor was able to escape? Is this back to being a plot hole? Anyway, moving forward, the brain pushes us back with its power, and we're subtly saved by the Emperor, who appears before hurling us into the astral prism. Okay, it's not a bad opening section. This isn't really an Elder Brain analysis, so I won't cover my thoughts here. It is nice to see the Emperor finally get something wrong for a change, however, I do wonder how he'll approach this setback. When we speak with the Emperor, he says that he's thought about why our attempt to wield the stones failed, and he comes to one conclusion. A mortal mind of any race simply cannot compare to the Netherbrain's. In order to truly defeat it, we'd have to think, or better yet, be an Illithid. The Emperor informs us that our mind is not capable of this, but that his is. We will hand the stones to him, he'll assimilate Orpheus, and gain his power before having the ultimate showdown with the brain. Oh my. Could this be the turn and final twist in the plot? Was this the Emperor's grand strategy? This is truly one of the hardest choices you make on a first run, and I will applaud Larian, just as I've critiqued them earlier. Act 3 should herald these kinds of dramatic, nail-biting, oh god, what do I do moments, and this is certainly one of them. On my first playthrough, I had truly felt so validated that finally the cracks were showing in this fraud, and instantly I was hooked back into the Emperor as this troublemaker kind of character. So, let's cover what I think is the strongest overall thematic choice here, breaking out Orpheus. As I stated earlier, if you went to the House of Hope and got the Orphic Hammer, the Emperor knows you have it. Why he doesn't say anything regarding this, or why he doesn't lock you up instantly or just take the hammer from you, seems like an odd moment for his intelligence to dwindle, but overlooking that, once in front of the Emperor, he presents this choice to you. I know for me, a smile crept across my face. I felt like he'd finally revealed himself to me. Of course you want me to give you these stones. And I refused. I also refused to become a mind flayer, and this set off the Emperor on another of his monologues on how he was your knight in shining armor, how he endlessly saved you from everything, how he never lied to you, not even once, how he came to you as a leader, and blah blah blah. Damn, does this feel good seeing this character squirm and openly cry about how we won't help him. I'm completely unsure if this was an intentional design choice to have the Emperor monologue here again and give his sob story, but to me, this is the time that I'd accept something like this, because we now have the power of a choice. We get to make our story, not him. Perhaps I was also too harsh, because in order for a moment like this to feel so sweet and well done, I wonder as a writer here, was the right call ultimately to have the Emperor constrain us so much earlier on? I'm sure the execution could have been done better, but having a character get their comeuppance feels better the longer it goes on for. Look at Game of Thrones and Ramsay Bolton as a perfect example. For 5 seasons, this guy was a monster that everyone hated and could not wait to see get his comeuppance, just like Joffrey Baratheon, and both of them finally did get what they deserved, and those are easily some of the highlights of the show, and the books. But in those cases, the writing actually gave them victories, and defeats, and close calls where they were almost stopped. With the Emperor, we did not get that, although this still feels amazing right now. The Emperor will then realize, since you have no intention of giving it your stones or becoming a Lithid, that this plan will not work, calling it impossible even if you were together. With that, the logical choice the Emperor makes is to fight you. Oh no, wait, did I read this right? He joins the Nether Brain? What? Look, I know I said this outcome, in my opinion, is the most narratively cohesive and satisfying ending for me, but the Emperor, wow, does this ending utterly butcher this character. Get the shovel, he is officially buried. Why would he join the Netherbrain? Why? He claims we are working against him, and that since we plan to free Orpheus, that this is the only option. I don't understand. Technically, doesn't the Emperor have the ability to wipe our memories, as he claims if our party catches us romancing him? Isn't he able to hover us at his own will? Like, if he is just able to convince one of our companions to join him, then wouldn't he stand a chance in a possible 3v2? Or hell, if he couldn't convince any of us, why then would he not attempt to take the stones? He said earlier he cares a lot about his freedom, right? So why would he go to the brain? Is it because he is patient and willing to wait however long for his next chance to come again? Maybe, but this is a nether brain, not an elder brain, as he himself points out. The power it has is far more immense, and if the grand design succeeds, there won't be another chance. That's kind of the entire point of the plot of the game. Say the Emperor didn't want to fight us. Why not choose to trust us then? And if we decide to free Orpheus, maybe if Orpheus chooses to try and kill us, like the Emperor said, then he might say, "Hey man, I told you so, now give me those stones and help me kill Orpheus." Or if Orpheus decides that he'll work with the party, which he does do, is it unreasonable to think that he'd be willing to let the Emperor wield the stones? Well, possibly yes, but if that is the case, why couldn't the Emperor then attempt to flee, having seen this situation devolve into Orpheus plus the party now wanting him dead? I just don't understand the logic here. You build this character up to be the ultimate schemer, and his temper tantrum monologue works, but dude, can this guy ever admit he's wrong? If you want to write a flaw for a character that can never admit they're wrong, then maybe you have a moment where the character sees that they can actually be wrong and are forced to admit it. Otherwise, you just get a really annoying character. I mean, he does this for what reason in writing? What is his character motivation here? Not freedom. Do not give me that. I think this is objectively bad writing. It's a surprise, and I remember getting this ending thinking the exact same thing. However, that doesn't excuse this. I was scratching my head wondering, did I unlock some secret Easter egg ending? This is bad. And by the way, the Emperor was finally wrong about something. Orpheus doesn't opt to kill you. So eat that, you Goomba. Anyway, an alternate route you can take, if you can't trust the Emperor to wield the stones, is to either become a Mind Flayer yourself, or allow Karlach to become one. Becoming a Mind Flayer in this scenario feels wrong, as you can't help but feel like you fell under the Emperor's manipulation. You end up feeding on Orpheus's brain and end up becoming a puppet to the Emperor. He doesn't literally thrall you, but I mean, come on, you're a Mind Flayer, guys. What more does he need to do? Alternatively, you can choose to trust the Emperor and hand him the stones, where the Orpheus ending feels like the good ending and the Mind Flayer ending feels like the bad ending. This ending feels more like the morally gray ending. The Emperor will consume Orpheus himself and wield the stones in place of you. This is the ending we'll continue reviewing for now. The boss fight will proceed the same across the board, but of course, if the Emperor wields the stone, you'll have the option to either have him fully destroy the Absolute, betray him and wield the stones yourself, or a secret third option, ask him to rule the Absolute alongside you. He does, to be fair, need to be speech checked however to do this, but if you succeed, yeah, he's just totally down to rule the world, even admiring your ambition and saying that he's proud of you. This scene ends with the Emperor giving his "in my name" line, and that's it. Overall an okay ending, but it doesn't really click for me personally. Cool that it's added. You can also opt to betray the Emperor here if you choose, which, if you'd run out of options or want to wield the stones yourself, then yeah, you shank him up a few times and that's it for the Emperor. Of course, if you are a Mind Flayer, you get some bonus interaction with the Emperor. Sure, you can still betray him, but if you allow him to use the stones and you make it to the docks, the Emperor will say how surprised he is that you worked with him, before mentioning to you that your partnership doesn't have to end here, suggesting that the two of you can rebuild the shield within Baldur's Gate. You can say that as as mind flayers, you both should have higher ambitions, and the Emperor will be happy, saying how he loves your company, and you two just kind of fly off together. Okay, so as far as the endings go, I am personally not surprised that the Emperor wants more following the defeat of the Netherbrain. He has always shown cunning and ambition, as well as desire for control, so I guess, yeah, this is okay. Then comes the ending where you betray the Emperor, which all of them just end the same, with you fighting the Emperor and the Dream Guardians and the Dragon and the Netherbrain. You know, when I first played this and got the 4 corrupted Dream Guardians to spawn, I really thought, man, that is so cool. The Emperor knows what our Guardians look like because he formed them, and now he's using psychological warfare. Then I realized these things spawn regardless of the fact. Kind of lame. And yeah, I've already spoken about how to me it doesn't make a ton of sense why the Emperor has sided with the Netherbrain. Act 3 was rushed. We know this. Could this be why this out of left field choice got made? Was Larian intending on fleshing out a small mini story with the Emperor if you chose to betray him? Maybe. Killing him doesn't yield any unique lines either. He just dies, and that's it. Also pretty lame. The only thing to cover with his endings is the epilogue party. He never comes to the party, regardless if you're an illithid or not, but he will send you some letters like many of the other NPCs. But to summarize the letters, it's just more of the same. He's the mastermind, you're the thrall. I'm convincing all of Faerun to join my lead. You're a fool for clinging to human memories and emotions. Become a mind flayer. Rah. And that's it for the content regarding the Emperor. I didn't cover every line of dialogue or moment where the guy ridicules you, like for example, him not wanting to help Minsk, but I feel like I've covered everything that's relevant for the point and the review that I'm about to make. This character was handled poorly. This character feels like a self-insert, dungeon master, custom character in your D&D campaign that he is simultaneously playing while DMing. And oh yeah, he's level 20. But guys, it's not overpowered, I swear. I don't like the Emperor, and I think this game would function overall better in a story sense without him, or with just less of him. Making him the crux for the party, in my opinion, was the wrong call. I understand that without a legitimate reason for having the player adventure and trying to solve this task, we might find ourselves asking, why do we care? But I don't think having this NPC know-it-all that was a mixed bag of intention and motivation was the answer to that question. I actually think some of the Emperor's writing is actually bad, while the rest of it seems to be rushed or incomplete. I've already spoken how outside of literally betraying him to free Orpheus and the short scene with Ansur, we never get to see this guy lose, be wrong, or panic. Even his death at our hands has no dialogue, no impact, nothing. Being forced to follow everything he says makes us feel like our character is being manipulated, but we know what's going on. We just have zero options besides listening to the Emperor. His veiled intentions are cool, and as I called him earlier, he is this mysterious force / troublemaker sort of character that overall I would deem as a wild card. The fact that if you follow the Emperor's plan, everything he says is true, and he doesn't have any hidden intentions, I guess can get bonus points for subverting our expectations, but personally, I'd have found it more interesting if he did have some alternative motives. His ending falls apart. Him joining the Netherbrain if you free Orpheus is not good, no matter how you want to point to him valuing freedom over everything, and he goes well beyond a character we love to hate and just a character that we find annoying. I'd already pointed to Raphael being a far better example of a know-it-all, almighty character in regards to execution, but hell, look at someone like Gortash in the same game. He is also a know-it-all kind of character, one that loves to manipulate and dominate. However, he gets his comeuppance several times, like when our party destroys the Iron Throne, frees the Gondians, or even if you side with him and the Netherbrain one-shots him. The Emperor is apparently faultless in-game, but his writing is the complete opposite, full of holes and full of faults. And that is it. Man, I did not expect this video essay to be 24 pages, but damn what a long video. I do hope you folks enjoyed it. It felt awesome doing another analysis, and I'd like to thank friend of the channel, Dark Urge Diaries, for lending some more footage, along with all the names linked below as well. I couldn't have done the video without you all. And now for some announcements. As we enter August, I already made a community post detailing this month for videos. I'm excited and feeling refreshed after my engagement, which, by the way, I am now engaged. I also made a community post regarding a special video we'll do at the end of the month, titled Reacting to Your Hot Takes, where I'll read through some hot takes and provide my opinion on your opinion. You can either post post your hot take here on this video, or on that community page, or any subsequent videos that will be coming out during this month. Do try to keep them to either Mass Effect or Baldur's Gate 3, but if you feel like putting a different game or a different opinion, I won't stop you. Also, I'm unsure at the time of this writing if we've hit 6,000 subscribers yet, but if we have, thank you all. And if we haven't, well, still thank you. I'd like to attempt to hit 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and as I've already mentioned, I will be putting in more work and time into this channel as we start to possibly look at a full-time position on the channel. With all of that being said, I do hope you all enjoyed today's video. It was a very fun one to make. Thank you as always guys for the support. This has been a big blessing to be able to do these videos, and so once more, let me say thank you. Until next we see each other, be well, stay safe, and until next time, bye bye.